I just know it's bad when James Carville has to step in and uh, try to rein in the Democrat Party. I mean, he's always been he hates Trump and he hates Republicans, he hates conservatives, he hates America, but he likes power. He likes the Democrats being on the top of things, I guess. And the problem you're running into is he's a numbers guy. He kind of understands where they're headed, the Democrats, that is. And people like Ilhan Omar that constantly attack the straight wet mill, the wet mill, wet mill. It's not a good thing. Um, you know, numbers are numbers, and he understands. He's going to break it down that there's a certain amount of voter base that you're just going to have regardless, and it's to the point where he's like, "Shut up, Ilhan Omar." Damn, this is pretty epic. Stick around and listen to this. This is wild.
Lady, why don't you just get out the Democratic Party? Honestly, start your own movement. All right, let's do the simple math. And probably 69%, I don't know, we could call Jim Gerstein or Jeff Garrett. Roughly 69% of the people going to vote in November, maybe more. Let's do 70 for just round math, are going to be white. Of that, 48%, maybe a little more, are going to be male. So that's roughly, let's just call it 33 and a third percent of the entire election. Well, let's just run against them because that's so goddamn smart. All right. So now we're going to have a campaign by the progressive left against white men who vote about a third of everybody that votes in an election. Why don't you, lady, start your own party? And then when it's over, if you want to caucus with the Democrats, fine. We agree with a lot of things that you do. But we don't believe we ought to be running against white men. In fact, we don't think we ought to be running against any gender, any ethnic group, any race, any religion, or anything else. God damn, these people are just helpless. They cannot be helped. There's nothing you can do to help them. They don't want to be helped. And if they had any guts, they'd start their own goddamn political party and get out of ours. I'm sorry. Lady,
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. We should be profiling, monitoring, and creating policies to fight the radicalization of white men.
Another thing too that kind of like stands out and in the world of WTF is how this has been allowed to be a thing where you have, how has Ilhan Omar been able to circumvent the actions that she performed with her brother? I say that candidly, but, she clearly committed some form of immigration fraud with her brother, where she married him. This is now pretty much public knowledge. And the best thing I can figure when it comes to how the Democrats plan to win the next round of elections is dirty tricks. It's got to be dirty tricks. Because the rhetoric of their violence and, their tactics has not stopped. It's gotten worse, and so when it comes to how they're going to win the next round of elections, I don't know what they're going to do. Well, I mean, really, the campaign of having Supreme Court judges in states and other intricate little key players tells me that they're going to really, really ramp up the next 3 years to try to facilitate the next election debacle and be able to pull it off legally. I'm just remembering what recently just took place in North Carolina. A Democrat judge is going to end up getting her seat, and she's not going to be very happy about what happened. She says, "Well, I'm going to uphold the law," and all this fancy stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, she's not happy about what Jefferson did in North Carolina to try to, to try to see what really happened. And that, even though she won her seat, after 2 weeks of counting papers, of choosings, whatever you want to call them, and under the North Carolina law, it's almost legal the way that they did it. It's lackadaisical. They want to have voter ID in North Carolina, but they don't have certain things in place when it comes to mail-in voting that would secure their actual being it was a legitimate vote. And they did that on purpose. They knew good and well that this would be a thing, especially after counting for almost 3 weeks, like they did California, way longer. But anyhow, so this is going to be real interesting how 2022 and 2024 turns out. They really want to flip a lot of the key battleground states over, and they're big mad about what happened in 2024 with Donald Trump winning the presidency and other things. So, but back to Ilhan Omar, really quickly, guys, there's a lot to be said here when it comes to how she tried to get her brother in. And what's even weird about it is after her brother and her were married, they didn't live together, of course, because I don't know. But anyhow, he took housing up in some kind of government-funded housing and then was evicted for whatever reason. There's some paperwork here that talks about the marriage license and everything between Ahmed Niar said Ilmis. And if you know what Ilhan Omar's background is so far as her role as political operative in her original home country, she's a very, very dangerous person. She's an activist and very evil. And she's openly said treasonous things in a lot of her campaigns and her speeches to the Somali people that have been all installed in her area by Barack Obama. Barack Obama built Ilhan Omar's district and displaced all the original people that lived there and went through really, well, there was a lot of steps. And we were all asleep to this because we didn't have independent media to report on it. But how Ilhan Omar has been able to retain her quote-unquote leadership in her district is because her whole thing is built. They've displaced a bunch of Somalis and put them right there where she's at, and she speaks to them saying that she's going to facilitate any power necessary that she has through the United States as government arms to make sure that her area is safe in Somalia. You're going to be safe through my leadership in America. That's treasonous to facilitate us to protect her. Which I guess you can look at what happened in Ukraine and whatnot, or anyways. A lot of layers with that, but she literally, from 2009 to 11 was legally married to her brother and divorced in 2011, and she's crazy. She is absolutely batshit crazy, and very dangerous. And the post for the notes that Omar married her brother Ahmad Snir Sid Elmi in 2009, implying that the latter marriage assisted his entry to the United States. Her brother was even a British citizen. As soon as Ilhan Omar married him, the post continued. She started a university at her alma mater where she went in North Dakota. This, by the way, was all paid for by your tax dollars. Her college tuition and everything was, further and indoctrinated her activism, and then graduated in 2012. Shortly thereafter, he moved to Minneapolis, where he was living in a public housing complex and was later evicted. You could do some crazy shit to get evicted from a public housing complex. I mean, for real. when the public housing complex goes, ooh, this is not good. You done something. You have done something. We don't know what that is yet, but he then returned to the United Kingdom, where he lives now. Ilhan Omar was elected to be state representative for District 60B in November. And in 2016, it took her oath on the Quran, by the way. It's like, okay, there is some serious issues with this person. She is not an American. She does not want to be American. She has she has no ties to America. She wants to use America for her benefit. She's probably, we don't know how much she's worth now, but she was suspected of using campaign donations to pay for the divorce from her brother. By the way, you're going to be footing the bill for Letitia James's legal troubles, taxpayers. I think it'd be New York taxpayers, but whatever. And speaking of taxpayers, California just come up with a big shortfall in their budget after the most taxed American citizens is California, and they just completely blew their budget. Which means they're going to rely on federal funding, and that's going to be kind of a weird thing. But anyways, so for the first time, one of those friends has come forward to reveal exactly how Ahmad Amu scandalized the Somali community in Minneapolis. Akidaklang Osman is the first person to go on record to speak on how Omar said she wanted to get her brother's papers so he could stay in the United States at a time when she was married to her first husband, Ahmed Hersey, but hardly anyone realized that meant marrying him. No one knew that the wedding nobody knew that they had a wedding until the media turned up the marriage certificate years later. Osman, 40, exclusively told Daily Mail, but this has long been rumored. And by the way, it was a reporter who actually found a cigarette she was smoking on in a facility where she was being held at in between immigration stuff. It was weird. She's done some crazy stuff and used that cigarette and a DNA sample to figure out that was her brother. That's not been talked about much, but this has been out for a long time, but nobody would believe it. But she denied the accusations, calling it absurd and offensive in the response, but then, it's here, and she lied about it. And so when will ICE actually do something with this crazy woman? And by the other operatives that are in our government right now for their own benefit? It's a good question, guys. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think.